Hey guys, in today's video, we'll meet Odessa Whitaker, a woman who faced death in a devastating accident and came back with a prophetic message that promises to shake the world. What she discovered about November 16th will leave you speechless. So, leave your like, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any powerful revelations like this. Get ready for a journey that will change the way you see life and the future. My name is Odessa Whitaker, and it all started in August 2017 when my life changed irreversibly. Until that moment, I was just another woman trying to rebuild the pieces of a fractured existence. My father had passed away the year before, and a painful divorce still haunted my days. That's when Ethan, my boyfriend at the time, suggested a trip to explore the mountains of Canada. It was an opportunity to escape the internal chaos and find some peace, or so I thought. The road was a mix of beauty and danger. The dizzying cliffs seemed to defy gravity, and the pine trees stood like lonely guardians of this remote landscape. The sky was a deep blue, but the tension inside the car was suffocating. Ethan and I had argued earlier, a silly fight about which route we should take. He was always stubborn, and I no longer had the energy for confrontation. "Are you well?" he asked finally, breaking the silence, but his voice sounded more like formality than genuine concern. "I am," I lied, looking out the window, trying to hide my dismay. Then, it happened. The sound of skidding tires was the only warning. I looked ahead and saw an out-of-control car coming towards us, invading our lane. Ethan shouted something I couldn't decipher as he turned the steering wheel to the side of the road. Everything seemed to slow down. I felt the car skid, spin once, then another, until a deafening collision threw us off the road. Everything went silent when the car stopped upside down, trapped by a precarious wall that barely separated us from a cliff. I looked at Ethan, who was conscious and trying to free himself from his seatbelt. "Odessa, talk to me. Are you well?" he repeated, panic taking over his voice. I wanted to respond, but everything inside me felt distant, as if my body had shut down. A strange calm enveloped me, and a single certainty struck me. I was about to die. There was no room for despair. I closed my eyes and whispered to myself, "It's okay. Everything is fine." That's when everything changed. When I closed my eyes, an absolute silence took over me, as if the world had ceased to exist. There was no more sound of twisted metal or broken glass, nor Ethan's desperate scream. There was no longer the weight of my body, the tightness of my seatbelt, or the pain I expected to feel. Everything disappeared, and the only thing that remained was a strange lightness. I opened my eyes, or at least I felt like I opened them, and realized I was no longer in the car. Below me, the scene was frozen in time, like a photograph suspended in midair. I saw the wrecked car, upside down, hanging precariously from the wall. Inside, my body was motionless, strapped into my seatbelt, with my hair disheveled and an expression of almost supernatural calm on my face. This can't be happening, I thought, but there was no fear. I floated, like a feather being carried by the wind, weightless, shapeless. It was as if I had become an observer of my own life, separated from everything that had previously seemed so important. The vision began to change. The road, the car, and even Ethan slowly disappeared, dissolving into a veil of darkness. But it wasn't scary darkness. It was warm, welcoming, like a blanket that wraps and protects. She couldn't explain how, but I knew I was safe. It was at that moment that I realized the complete absence of my physical senses. I couldn't hear, see, or touch like I used to. Still, I was more aware than ever. It was as if I had woken up from a long sleep and finally saw reality. "Is this how it ends?" I asked in thought, without waiting for an answer. But somehow the answer came. Not in words, but in a feeling that invaded my being. No, this is just the beginning. The darkness around me began to transform. Points of light appeared, timid at first, but soon multiplied. I felt drawn to them as if they were long-lost friends. An indescribable calm came over me, and for the first time in years, I felt like everything was exactly as it should be. The darkness began to give way to something different, something that seemed alive. It was as if I was surrounded by clouds, but they weren't clouds as we know them. They glowed softly, with a light that pulsed like a beating heart. Everything around me felt soft, welcoming, like an invisible hug. Despite being in this unfamiliar place, I felt a familiarity that I couldn't explain. It was like coming home after years away, to a place that had always been waiting for me. A clear thought crossed my mind. This is my home. As I adjusted to this new environment, I began to feel presences. I didn't see them as human figures, but as lights that danced and vibrated in colors I had never seen before. They were not just beautiful, they were alive. Each one seemed to have its own identity, an essence that I could feel deeply. Without words, these presences communicated something much more powerful. Love, a pure, unconditional love that seemed to cross all layers of my being. It was so intense that I started crying, even without a physical body. I felt like they really knew me, not just the Odessa of this life, but all the versions of myself, of other lives that I knew. In some way, I had lived. "You are safe," was the constant message they conveyed. I also felt a gentle curiosity coming from them. It was as if they wanted to get to know me more, to know about the experiences I had had on Earth. There was no trial, no accusation or reproof. All the failures, mistakes, and regrets I carried for years seemed to have no importance here. Suddenly I realized something. These presences were not strange. I knew them. I couldn't remember where, but I knew I had encountered them before, perhaps in previous cycles of life and death. It brought a sense of belonging that I had never experienced before. This is where I belong, I thought. One of them, bigger and brighter than the others, came closer to me. His presence brought a new wave of calm and certainty. Although it didn't have a face, I felt it smiling at me. In a voice that was not spoken but felt, she conveyed, "There is something important you need to know." Before I could ask what it was, a new light began to appear on the horizon of that celestial space, shining differently. Something was coming. The light that formed on the horizon was not like the others. It was more intense. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like the beating of wings. As she approached, the entire space around me began to vibrate, but not threateningly. It was a deep vibration, full of power and reverence. And then, he appeared. At first, it was just a radiant figure, but soon its shape was defined. It was not human in the traditional sense, but it had contours that resembled a man. Its wings, long and translucent, seemed to be made of pure light. His eyes, although without a defined color, conveyed a wisdom and love that were impossible to describe. He was majestic, but his presence was not intimidating. On the contrary, she emanated immense comfort. "Odessa," he said, and his voice was not heard but felt in every part of my being. It was like thunder wrapped in melody, resonating both in the environment and within me. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, floating, waiting for him to continue. "You still have a journey to complete," he began, looking directly at me, or perhaps through me. "But before you return, there is something you need to know." Suddenly, I was enveloped by a vision. It wasn't like watching a movie, but like living it. Images, sounds, and feelings invaded my consciousness in an overwhelming way. I saw cities around the world being shaken by catastrophic events. Violent storms swept away homes, while earthquakes cracked the ground. People ran for shelter, desperate, but there was also something beyond the chaos. Between the scenes of destruction, I saw people helping each other, reaching out, joining forces in the midst of adversity. "This will occur on November 16th, the angel said, his voice cutting through the visions. "These events are not punishments, but tests. Tests to awaken humanity." I felt my heart, or whatever my essence was at that moment, tighten. It was as if part of the burden of that knowledge was already being placed on me. "Tests for what?" I asked. Or maybe I just thought, "So that you remember who you really are," he replied. "Love, unity, compassion. This is the purpose of humanity, but many have forgotten. What will come will be a call to remember." When the vision ended, he bowed slightly, as if he had accomplished his mission. "Fear not. You are not alone." Before I could ask further, I felt a force begin to pull me back, as if something was pulling me out of that place. The feeling of being pulled back was sudden and overwhelming. The spiritual environment, with all its peace and welcome, began to disappear as if it were being sucked into an invisible vortex. I felt myself being pulled by an irresistible force, a kind of whirlpool that dragged me back to reality. "Wait," I thought, trying to resist. "I'm not ready to go back." But the force was uncontrollable, as if the time had come to leave that spiritual plane. The light, the beings, the angel, Everything disappeared from view, but the feeling of love and safety remained with me, like an invisible thread that still connected me to them. Suddenly, everything changed. I opened my eyes, but this time, they were my physical eyes. It was hanging upside down inside the wrecked car. The pain returned with full force, and the weight of my body pressed against the seatbelt that still held me. "Odessa, talk to me." Ethan's voice cut through the air. He was struggling to free himself from his own seatbelt, his hand shaking as he tried to reach mine. I'm fine," I managed to mumble, surprised by the calm in my voice despite the chaos around me. The car was leaning dangerously on the wall, and any sudden movement could have sent us tumbling down the cliff below. Broken glass was scattered across the floor, and the smell of gasoline was strong. But somehow I wasn't afraid. The peace I had experienced on the other plane seemed to have infiltrated my soul, creating a surreal contrast with the chaotic scenery. Ethan finally managed to free himself and started working on my belt. His eyes were filled with panic, but his determination was unshakable. "You'll get out of here, I promise." "Ethan," I called, my voice soft but firm. He stopped for a moment and looked me in the eyes. "On everything will be fine." He seemed confused, perhaps even frustrated by my apparent serenity. For him, I must have been in shock, but for me, the certainty that everything was as it should be was absolute. With effort, he managed to undo my belt, and together, we crawled out of the car. With every movement, I felt like I had left something behind in that accident, but also brought something precious with me. As I looked at the wrecked car and the vast mountainous landscape around us, a single word resonated in my mind: mission. Sitting next to the wrecked car, surrounded by the fresh mountain air, I felt something I had never experienced before: absolute peace. It wasn't just the calm that comes after a moment of great danger. It was something bigger, something spiritual. It was as if the invisible thread that connected me to where I had been was still pulsing inside me. Ethan continued to panic, talking to rescuers on the phone. He paced back and forth, his eyes still wide with fear. "Odessa, how can you be so calm? We almost died." He stopped in front of me, arms open, gesturing nervously. "I don't know how to explain it," I replied, looking at him with a serenity that seemed to defy him. "But I feel like everything is exactly as it should be." He shook his head, frustrated. "You must be in shock. This is not normal." But it was normal. More than normal. It was transcendent. I looked at the mountains in the distance, at the clouds that seemed to caress the peaks, and at the sky that opened in shades of blue and gold. For the first time in years, everything felt incredibly alive and connected. It was as if I could feel the earth's breath, the pulse of its soul. Rescuers arrived within minutes. They assessed us, checked for signs of injuries, and were surprised to find only a few scratches. As they inspected the wrecked car, one of them looked at me and said, "You guys were lucky. If they had slid another meter, they would have been down there." I just smiled and nodded, but deep down I knew it wasn't luck. Something or someone had intervened so that I could return. In the days that followed, this feeling of deep peace did not leave me. It was like I was floating, not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense. Walking the streets, feeling the wind on your face, hearing the birds singing, everything seemed imbued with a greater purpose. Even the mundane things that once irritated me now seemed irrelevant. Traffic jams, bills to pay, people's judgmental looks, none of that mattered. I had experienced something that transcended all of that, something that showed me that the essence of life is love. For months, I lived in this state of spiritual ecstasy. It was as if I was seeing the world with new eyes, eyes that recognized the connection between all things. The trees weren't just trees. They were living beings with stories to tell. The people who crossed my path were not strangers. They were souls who shared the same purpose. But even in the midst of this peace, I knew I had a mission. The angel's words constantly echoed in my mind. Get ready, prepare the others. Although spiritual ecstasy accompanied me for months, life soon brought its challenges. The deep connection I felt during and after the experience began to be tested in ways I hadn't imagined. It was as if that state of peace was a temporary gift to help me deal with the consequences of what came next. Ethan was the first to walk away. He could never understand my transformation. "You're not the same anymore," he said one night, sitting on the couch in the small apartment we shared in Boulder. "Of course I'm not," I replied, trying to remain calm. "I experienced something that changed everything inside me. But you act like everything is perfect now, like nothing else matters. Odessa, we almost died. I don't know how you can just move on like nothing happened. I'm not moving on like nothing happened, I snapped, but he shook his head and sighed. Exhausted. Deep down, I knew he was right. Our connection had changed. I felt like we were on different frequencies now, like I had awakened to something he couldn't see. In the following months, our paths parted. Ethan returned to Denver, and I stayed in Boulder, where I began to face the internal challenges that my experience had awakened. Slowly, memories I had buried began to surface. Some were from painful events in my childhood, grief for my father, the emotional abuse I endured in the past, the guilt over decisions I made. Others seemed to come from lives that I couldn't explain, but that seemed as real as the memories of this lifetime. These memories were not easy to deal with. There were nights when I cried without knowing why, while flashes of images and emotions flooded my mind. It was as if the experience had opened the doors to a process of spiritual purification, forcing me to confront everything I had avoided for so long. At the same time, the world around me began to look different. People, places, and even everyday situations seemed to have a greater purpose. I began to realize that every interaction, no matter how small, carried lessons, for myself and for others. One day, while walking in the park, a woman I had never met stopped and looked me in the eye. "You have something special," she said, smiling. "Keep sharing this." I didn't know exactly what she meant, but those words resonated with me. Perhaps it was a reminder that my mission, however nebulous, was slowly unfolding. Integrating the NDE lessons was a slow, sometimes painful, but always transformative process. I knew the challenges were part of something bigger, a preparation for what was yet to come. And deep down, the angel's words continued to echo. Get ready. Prepare the others. Over the next few months, I began to realize that my life had taken on a new purpose, even if I still didn't know exactly how to fulfill it. The angel's words, get ready, prepare others, were a constant reminder that my experience was not just an isolated event. I knew I needed to do something meaningful with what I experienced, but the path to do so was unclear. My preparation journey started modestly. I started meditating daily, seeking to reconnect with the feeling of peace I experienced during the NDE. In the beginning, it was difficult. My mind was filled with doubts and fears, but over time, I discovered that inner silence was still there, waiting for me. I also started to study spirituality in more depth. Books about near-death experiences, meditation, and spiritual philosophies began to fill my shelves. I devoured each page, trying to better understand what had happened to me. I slowly realized that my experience was not unique. Other people had been through something similar and, like me, felt they had been called to a greater purpose. One day, during a meditation session, I felt a sudden urge to write. I took a notebook and started writing down everything I remembered about the experience. The welcoming darkness, the beings of light, the angel and his message. As I wrote, the memories flowed like a river, and I realized that this was an essential step in my preparation. However, it wasn't long before I faced resistance, both internal and external. When I shared my experiences with some people close to me, the reaction was not what I expected. Friends and family looked at me with skepticism, some even with concern. "Are you sure it wasn't just a dream or hallucination?" they asked. I tried to explain, but I soon realized that I didn't need to convince anyone. My experience was real to me, and that was enough. While walking in the park, an unexpected encounter changed my perspective. I met a woman named Clara who worked as a spiritual counselor. When I told her about my NDE, her eyes lit up. "Odessa," she said, "your story has power. You need to share it. It's not about who believes or not, but who needs to listen." Those words were the push I needed. I decided that in order to prepare myself and help others, I needed to find a way to share my experience. I started looking for ways to connect with people who, like me, were searching for meaning in their lives. My journey was just beginning, but I knew that every step I took was bringing me closer to the purpose the angel had shown me. November 16th is just a few days away, and the weight of this moment is building inside me like a storm in the distance. Ever since my near-death experience, that day has been on my mind, pulsing like a constant warning. What will he bring? Change? Challenges? I only know what the angel said. Tests, union, awakening. This morning, When I woke up, I felt something different. I can't fully explain it, but the world feels more alive. The colors are more vibrant, the sounds deeper. As I sipped my coffee on the balcony, I looked at the horizon and felt as if something was approaching, an invisible wave that has not yet arrived, but whose presence is impossible to ignore. I spent a good part of the day reviewing the notes I've been taking since the accident. There are pages and pages about the NDE, the visions and the angel's message. It's difficult to explain the meaning of these words to other people, but for me, they are a guide. I received a call from Clara a little while ago. "Odessa," she said, her voice racing slightly. "People are feeling it. Have you seen social media? Reports of dreams. People talking about a strange energy in the air. It seems like the collective is waking up even before the 16th. "I know," I replied, trying to maintain my usual calm. "I feel that too." "Then come," she insisted. "We are organizing a meditation circle tomorrow night. It will be powerful. We need to be together." I accepted the invitation without hesitation. Clara has been one of the few people who truly understands what I've been through, and sharing this journey with her has been a source of comfort and clarity. Later, as I walked through the park to clear my head, I found a group of people gathered in silence. Some were holding hands. Others were just sitting on the grass looking up at the sky. A woman approached me. "You feel it too, don't you?" she asked, with a mysterious smile. "Yes," I replied, not knowing exactly how to explain it. "Change is coming," she said, before returning to the group. "These moments have become increasingly frequent. It's as if a collective consciousness is forming, connecting people in ways I never thought possible. There are only a few days left now. Every moment feels charged with meaning, and my mission is clearer than ever, to help others prepare for what's to come. I feel the energy in the air is becoming more and more intense. It's as if something invisible is moving around us, pushing us toward a change we don't yet fully understand. Every moment, I feel the weight of the angel's message. Get ready, prepare the others. Today I started the day by revisiting my notes. With each page, I remember the visions I was shown, cities and people facing challenges, but also coming together in ways we never imagined. It's strange to think that something so big could be about to happen, but at the same time, I feel an absolute certainty inside me. I went for a walk in the morning, as I have been doing almost every day. The park was busier than usual, but what caught my attention was the people's behavior. There was a silence in the air, a calm that seemed to contradict the movement around. Some faces had introspective expressions, as if they were trying to decipher something they couldn't put into words. In the afternoon, I received a call from Clara. "Odessa, are you following what is happening in the world?" she asked, not hiding the urgency in her voice. "Not enough," I replied. "What did you discover?" "Reports are emerging from everywhere. Collective dreams, people feeling an inexplicable need to reconnect with others. It's as if the entire world is being touched by something invisible." I wasn't surprised. Since my NDE, I've been noticing subtle signs that something is moving, something that transcends the physical. Clara and I have agreed to meet tomorrow for a meditation circle, where more people will share what they are feeling. As I get ready for bed, I look out the window and watch the sky. The stars seem brighter tonight, almost as if they are dancing. A thought crosses my mind. Are we ready? Although I don't know exactly what will happen on the 16th, I have an unshakable certainty that it will be a turning point. My mission is clear: maintain my peace, my connection, and help others find the same path. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.